So welcome to an off-tempo Thursday video on this channel. As discussed yesterday during the RCA Training Tip Show, I would be sharing the full 27-minute discussion with expert bike fitter Neill Stanbury, who provides an overview of his philosophy of bike fitting, what areas for fitting improvements he commonly finds with athletes, and then we dissect what Neill found wrong with me and what changes we're making. In addition, I will also share the follow-on discussion we have surrounding Speedplay and Shimano pedals. Now I'll put some timestamps below for anyone out there that might want to go to some specific sections, and let's get into it. All right, Neill, so we're here at Cam's Collective in Brisbane. We've just finished a 3-hour bike fit.
Yep.
Before we get into my fit and you sharing what you found with me, can you just tell me a little bit about your background? How long have you been bike fitting for?
So I think around 10 years. It's somewhere between 8 and 10, I reckon. I started out life as a regular sports physio, and one day came across a pretty serious problem in my own body, which was stopping me from riding. And I got interested in the process of fitting people then because I had 3 professional bike fits in Melbourne and got nowhere. My knee was still just as sore as it was before. And so that's what got me into it in the first place many years ago. And I've just developed my skills ever since and specialised in it more and more. And now it's probably most of what I do. It's certainly in Brisbane now, it's all that I do. I've just moved back up here from Melbourne. So I just got interested in it the way a lot of people do with my own problems and trying to overcome them.
Yes, right. And you've been fitting for 10 years. You've seen a lot of people. Before we talk about the things that you identified with me, what are the most common challenges or opportunities people have when it comes to fitting that you've seen in your experiences?
Biggest challenges they face? Finding a good bike fitter.
Yes, massive. That's a big one.
And the overload of information. The internet is great for finding information, but sometimes there's a massive overload of information. You might find 10 different ways to set your seat height, and picking which one is the right one, well, that can be very tricky. So the overload of information is a big problem. Finding a good person who knows what they're doing seems to be harder than it should be.
Yes.
And then finding a solution that works for you. If you're a bit unusual, if you're a person who's got a big leg length difference or something like that, it can be really tricky to find someone with good knowledge of how to resolve those types of issues.
Yes.
Setting your seat height and your seat setback and your reach and your drop can be tricky, just doing it by feel as well. So ideally you need a good pair of eyes on you if you can find them. Yeah.
It's a good segue because something I noted today is you're not really using the softwares, the retool machines, that kind of thing. Obviously we use some like a laser thing and a few other bits and pieces, but you put a screw in my leg, on my foot, and did a few old school things which I kind of really liked. What's your reasoning behind not using, those big machines and big softwares, etc.? Yeah,
so look, the bike fitting industry has become very tech heavy, mostly so that it can be mass produced. So you need to now, in the business of bike fitting, you need to be able to run a course where you can teach average punters or guys with an interest in this how to run a software program to create a position and sell it for $300. So you need to be able to standardize it, and software is motion tracking software and that type of thing is an attempt by business people to standardize the industry, which is a great idea. It just doesn't work really well. No. I can see why they've done it, but it just doesn't work. Unfortunately, it's one of those industries where you need a person with a lot of experience and a really good eye. I used a little bit of motion tracking software many years ago, and all I did was found that it confirmed what my eyes were seeing, and as a secondary effect, it slowed me down. I would be constantly second guessing, looking back at the screen, looking at the person, looking at the screen. And I found myself just losing track of what I should be looking at, which is the rider. And really there's nothing that motion tracking software can show you that your eyes can't see if you're looking close enough.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, I just found that it slowed me down. It didn't add anything to the experience. And so I got rid of it all in the end and just, I use my eyes and a lot of intuition and knowledge of things that I've seen before. And if you've got a good idea about human posture and function and that type of thing, you don't need any of that stuff. You just need a really good pair of eyes and a problem-solving mindset, which is really critical as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So talk me through, so there's a few interesting things that I want to talk about. The shims you put in my foot, you've told me to get on shorter cranks, so I want to talk about the cranks.
Yes.
There's some interesting takeaways for me, and also a new way to ride. Even though they might be small differences, I already feel more symmetrical.
Yes. Yeah.
On the bike, which is good. But we went through quite a thorough process, which was step by step. So do you want to just talk us through what your process was with me, and then what we identified as we go through the process? Because the first thing we did was you were poking and prodding me. What was that all about?
Yeah, so look, the first 45 minutes is usually me looking at you off the bike, trying to figure you out. So look, yeah, I go over the person with a fine-tooth comb before we get them anywhere near the bike. Otherwise, I would have never known or suspected that you had a right-sided leg length difference. So we also noted that your 2 feet were different sizes, and that you've got some pretty decent hip impingement, which stops you from internally rotating your hips. So immediately we're thinking, right, this guy's going to probably need a shim underneath his right foot. He's probably going to do well with a staggered cleat position because of his foot size difference, and he might do well with his feet further apart. And they were the 3 things we basically ended up changing. So we look at you off the bike a lot and then we throw you on the bike and see if those things that we spotted match up with how you actually ride. And most of the time they do. Sometimes you get something totally left of field, which doesn't make sense. But you were pretty straightforward. You had a shorter right leg, and you dropped your right hip, and your quadricep muscle bulk imbalance that you've noticed. We immediately noted that your left quad was much bigger on the inside section, which tells me that you're dropping your right hip, and your left knee is tracking outside the line of the pedal, and your quad is trying to control that motion, so it's bulked up and gotten physically larger to deal with the extra load. So you go over the person, or I go over the person in great detail before they go anywhere near the bike. And then we use a process of trial and error, of educated guess and check, I like to call it, where we know for you there were 3 main things: the hips, the foot size difference, and the leg length difference. And those were the 3 things we focused on, and we used a combination of all of those tweaks in the feet to get the best possible symmetry out of you. And that is, in your case, was really the only problem, was your symmetry. Your general position was really good already before we even started. It's just a symmetry issue.
Is that common for most people with your fit though, like the leg length and the hip?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I always preface that when I'm explaining all this stuff to people. Say, hey, look, you're not that messed up. Most people are like this. You've got a pelvic tilt and a small rotoscoliosis of your spine, and one of your shoulders sits a bit lower. But unless anyone ever pointed it out with the degree of nitpicking that I am pointing it out, no one would ever know. You would have had physios look over you in the past. No one's mentioned it, because those degrees of asymmetry are irrelevant in the real world. They're only relevant on a bike. When the bike demands the highest degree of symmetry of any sport you'll ever do in your life. And so most of the complexity of fitting a person to a bike is resolving asymmetries, one-sided problems, one-sided knee pain or foot pain or whatever it is. And so a huge amount of the stuff that we do when we're looking at you off the bike is assessing asymmetries.
Yes.
And we ended up doing a few things and going to we use this shim underneath your right foot here, which is a leg length compensator. There's 2 3mm shims there. It's basically making your right leg a little bit longer, so it matches your left one, because we unfortunately can't make your left leg any shorter.
Yes.
As much as fun as that would be. And the second thing we did was move your feet a bit further apart to unload your hip impingement a little bit. And the shorter cranks, which we haven't changed today, but I'm nudging you in the direction of trying some 165s, because your pelvic posture is very posteriorly rotated on the bike. So you've very much got that C-shaped curve to your spine. And if we could anteriorly rotate your pelvis, your head would drop down, your aerodynamic gains would be significant enough that it's worth trying for the few $100s that it costs. And you'll feel, I'll guarantee you'll just feel better as well. You'll find it hard to quantify, but you'll feel better.
Yeah, okay.
And so some 165s I think would be a good move for you. And it's only because you've got some pretty decent hip impingement type stuff going on, where you've got no available internal rotation of either of your hips, because of the orientation of your sockets inside your pelvis. So it's a genetic thing. You can't really change it much.
Yeah. So let's talk. I'm keen to talk about the cranks.
Yeah. Because
the crank length is quite a. I feel like it's a bit of a one size fits all. Everyone's 172.5, or 80% of the population is, and I don't think that is the case. But before that, the shims, I've never had a shim put in there before, and you said something to me that was interesting during the fit. that of all the bike fits that you have done over the years, only 2 people have ever come in with a shim.
Yes.
But 3/4 of people have a leg length discrepancy and leave with the shim. So what's the explanation behind that?
Yeah, so the explanation is that about 75% of the people that came into my clinic to be fitted had already been fitted elsewhere, sometimes multiple times, and they were unhappy with it. So they're seeing me as a 3rd, 4th or 5th opinion. And of all the people that leave my clinic, about 3/4 of them leave there with a shim underneath one foot. Now, sometimes it's 2 millimeters, sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 6, but 3/4 of people deal, that they function better with a shim underneath one foot. So of all those thousands of people that have come through my doors, only 2 have ever come in with a shim underneath one foot, which the conclusion that I eventually came to was that other bike fitters, at least in Melbourne, don't use leg length shims, which is very bizarre, very strange and a bit depressing, because leg length shims are definitely the best way to account for a leg length difference. Some people advocate staggering the cleat forward, but that comes with other problems where it effectively changes the cleat position of one foot whilst also making the leg effectively longer. It comes with other downsides. So using leg length shims as a way of compensating for structural leg length differences is the best solution that I've ever come across. And I'm happy to change my mind if I ever find a better solution. But yes, as far as I can tell, most bike fitters don't really use shims, at least the people that were coming to see me after being fitted elsewhere. Seeing a shim was rare as hen's teeth. And I think the 2 guys that brought them in had actually put them there themselves. They weren't put there by the bike fitters. So they'd figured out themselves through trial and error that they had a leg length difference.
Yeah. So the idea here is that I will no longer be favouring the left-hand side by about 10% in my pedal stroke. Will I become more powerful because of that?
It's possible that you'll gain a bit. Yeah, you'll certainly. I find people the decreased neurological load of compensating, so the fatigue that it induces to create an asymmetrical pedal stroke. Once that's taken out of the equation, they tend to find their endurance gets a bit better, even if their outright power output for a 20-minute effort doesn't actually go up a lot. In your case, I reckon you'll pick up a little bit. It might be measurable. You'll certainly feel better, and it'll hugely reduce your propensity for developing left-sided knee pains in the future. Yeah. I have had people occasionally pick up big wattages, big like 5 to 10% gains once we've removed an asymmetry, a big asymmetry like a big leg length difference or something from their position. But that's rare. Most of the time, it'll be the person will feel a lot better.
Yes.
But they may not be able to quantify a huge gain. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of other things wrong with the position, like the seat is way too high, or the seat's way too far back, or the reach is all wrong, if you change a lot of other things, the gains can be very large if the position was way off where it should have been.
Yes.
Yeah. And especially if this or the lack of this was causing you pain, because pain is the biggest detriment to performance you'll ever have, right? As soon as you're in pain or there's an inflammation somewhere, your brain will curtail your energy delivery to your legs so that you can't hurt yourself any further. So you literally become tired when you're sore to slow you down, to protect the joint or whatever it is. So not being in pain tends to be the biggest performance improver.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, as if your knee's not hurting, you can train harder too.
Absolutely.
You can gain more.
And tell me about the crank length. Like what's that going to do, and why is everyone supposedly a 172.5?
It's one of those things that got ingrained into bike fitting or cycling law, I believe, through repetition. A long time ago, there's a story behind this, I don't know the details, but someone came up with a crank length based upon a mathematical principle, and it just kind of stuck. And that was it. It was like the ball of foot over pedal spindle idea, where you should always have the center of the cleat underneath the ball of your foot exactly. That was just someone said it one day and it kind of made sense. And so everyone started doing it. And everyone followed the herd, and that just became a thing for a long time. Crank length is very much like that. It started out as 172.5 a long time ago for whatever reason, and people just stuck with it, In your case, you'll gain from it because of what it will do for your hip impingement. It'll enable you to roll your pelvis further forward. Your head will go down, the front end will go out and down, and your aerodynamic gains will far outweigh any slight power loss if you lose any power. I don't think you'll lose anything.
But you said you'll only lose power at the top end, not really. Like you maybe gain it over a 5, 10, 15, 20 minute effort, but maybe the sprint?
Yeah, the shorter cranks tend to make more of a difference in a positive sense over long efforts, because they decrease joint angle speeds and the length by which your muscle spindles have to change, so they seem to have physiological benefits more over longer efforts in my experience. Short efforts is where it becomes a slight problem. If you've got a big chunky guy who loves low cadence riding and who rides crits and needs to jump on someone's wheel and create an instantaneous burst of torque over a very short effort, 3-5 seconds, the shorter cranks can cause a problem because you have to sort of wind them up a bit. You don't have as long a lever arm to create instantaneous torque efforts. So that can be a slight downside of going to shorter cranks. So if you're a big, chunky, strong guy with a big, powerful sprint, you can't maintain good leg speed and you race crits a lot, well, it's probably not going to work out too well for you. But if you're a lean guy who has a big 20-minute power and no sprint, you're not going to lose anything anyway off your sprint because you're never going to be winning a race from a sprint anyway. And so for your physiology, it makes a lot of sense in most of the ways. So it's well worth you trying rather than just going, I'll just stick with the 172s. And if you're going to try, don't go down 2.5 mils, go down 5 or 7.5 mils. Go down to 167.5 or 165. You won't perceive almost any change from a 2.5 mil change. You'll start to perceive it at 5 mils, and after 7.5 mils, you'll definitely be able to tell the difference. Yeah,
okay. Do you want to tell me about the inner sole? Because we changed the inner sole and you've got some interesting inner soles there. So can you show the camera what you've got there?
Yeah, so I've been using these for a long time. David Lee at G8. I know him fairly well now, and he's produced a really good product. These are the G8 ArchTech 2620s, bit of a mouthful. And they have 5 different levels of adjustable arch height. So there's 5 different modules with different heights, and you can move them around to suit the shape of your arch. And so I use them because they're very adaptable. A lot of people need a level 4 arch on the left foot and a level 3 on the right, and you can do that instead of just having symmetrical insoles for an asymmetrical pair of feet. Bit more expensive. These are about as custom as you can go without being custom.
Yes.
I can't give every rider custom insoles because they require time to manufacture. Come in for a fitting and we'll measure your feet up and get you some custom insoles. Come back in 2 weeks and we'll finish the fit. Can't really work like that. So these are about as custom as we can get without going to full custom.
Yeah, okay.
And they're very high quality.
And what does good arch support give you while you're riding? What's it going to do?
It spreads the load of foot pressure over a larger surface area. So you're less, if you've got a decent solid level of arch support in there, you're less inclined to get hot foot problems and that type of thing because the spread of load over the foot is larger. The pressure is being spread over a larger area. But more than that, it gives you really good clarity of proprioception. So stability of the foot over the pedal, that type of thing, is massively improved when there's a better contact patch with a little bit of arch tension and correct wedging and that sort of stuff, which we didn't get into much with you at all because it wasn't necessary. But it can make or break a rider sometimes, and other people it makes no difference to them.
Right.
But it's part of the fitting to give you the best possible outcome. I give these to everyone. It's actually built into the cost of the fit.
Right.
If I come across a person who's already got a set of custom ones or something which are in good nick, and we actually take that off the price of the fit. But these are so important to a good position, or a good set of arch supports is so important to a good position that I actually build it into the cost of the fit now.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't want to give people the chance to go, I don't want to pay another $90 for that, and then we get a suboptimal outcome.
Yes.
I'd rather them just be expecting, this is how much it's going to cost. I'm not trying to sell you these. I pass these things on for a fraction over wholesale price to my clients. And I don't therefore make any kind of margin on any parts that I sell. So I'm trying to be completely independent. Even stems and bars and saddles and stuff, that kind of thing. So there's very, very little margin for my clients because I don't want to become a shop where I'm inclined to sell you things.
Yes.
I'm more than happy to sell you my time and my expertise, but I don't want to sell you things because then people start thinking, well, maybe I don't really need that new saddle.
Yes.
Or did he give me those bars just to make $40?
Yeah.
I don't want people asking those questions.
Yeah, of course. But it demonstrates the importance to your process of the inner sole.
Yes, yeah. In your case, you just got a really rigid, high arched foot, and people with your foot type really always function much better with decent arch support, and they're much less inclined to get hot foot and that type of thing as well.
Yeah. Now that we've been through this fit process, is it set and forget, or what happens next?
We'll try and see you again in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. You've got some reasonable muscle imbalances because you've been dropping your right hip for a long time. Your left inner quad is much bigger than your right and so forth, and your left ITB was really tight. So those will hopefully work themselves out now that you're pedaling with much greater stability, speed and symmetry. And so we'll see you again in a couple of months and see how many of those asymmetries have worked themselves out, and if we need to tweak this. Because right now your leg is 6 millimeters shorter than the other one, but if you were more muscularly symmetrical, if future cam is in better physical condition than current cam in terms of symmetry, this might only need to be 4 millimeters or 5. Some of this 6 millimeters could be structural, and some of it could be structural leg length, and some of it could be a functional leg length difference, which is to do with muscle strength comparisons to left and right, that type of thing. So you may change in the future. So we always try and follow you up a few months later to see how many of those things have worked themselves out, if we can.
Yeah, okay.
It's never set and forget because your body is never in the same state for decades. You know, people constantly in a state of change, and their position should be as well. Once we find a pretty happy medium, you tend to fluctuate around that sort of ideal symmetry point only small amounts, which don't matter. But when you're fluctuating around that symmetry in a physical sense in a large way, that's when you get trouble, you know. So for you now, any changes in the future will become progressively smaller and smaller. Yeah. Because your body won't have as much capacity to change in terms of your symmetry. Yeah.
So while we're here, because I'm going to do a Speedplay versus a Shimano, can you give me a quick 2-3 minute Speedplay versus Shimano?
Speedplay versus Shimano. Speedplay, double-sided entry, a much more forgiving entry because you don't have to flip the pedal over, so you just stand on it and it goes in. They take a bit of wearing in, so they have a downside. When they're new, they're really stiff. After 50 clip in and out cycles, they become a lot easier, so some people don't like that. They're more adjustable. They've got more ability to go back and sideways and adjustable float.
Is that a bad thing?
It can give you too many options to think about. Yeah, it's great for me.
Because my left leg was floating around a lot in the pedal and it enabled me to do that. Are you better off locking it in, or would you rather let the natural movement happen?
It depends on the rider. It's one of those, for some people, locking the foot in is a necessity because it's the only way they can function.
Yep.
In your case, using the Speedplays with more float allowed your knee to not hurt.
Yes.
But the reason your knee was hurting and your foot was squirreling on the pedal in the first place was because of a right-sided leg length difference.
Yes.
So you would be fine with Shimano pedals or looks or whatever. Now, the shimming we used is 6 millimeter shim.
Okay.
Which we can do. So the Speedplays require a little bit more maintenance.
Yes.
You got to keep them clean, you got to lubricate them a bit and that kind of stuff. But if you've got some mechanical aptitude and you don't mind doing that, they're a really good pedal system.
Yep.
I use them a lot for weird and wonderful cases because they're more adjustable. There's more you can do with them in terms of cleat placement fore and aft with the base plate extenders, but there is nothing inherently terribly wrong with any of the 3-bolt systems. If there was, they wouldn't exist anymore. They would have been pushed out of the market. So I like them, but they're not for everyone.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And what about Shimano?
Less maintenance. They can get dirtier and it doesn't matter. Shimano, any of the 3-bolt systems, they wear out by walking on them rather than clipping in and out, whereas these wear out from riding and clipping in and out as opposed to walking on them.
Interesting.
So you don't want to be, if you don't walk on your Shimano cleats, they last you forever.
Yeah.
They just hack away on the bottom because of walking on them. So
well, what about the fact that the Shimano, they say it has a larger area that you're pushing the power through, but with Speedplay, yes, it is a smaller area, but you're closer to the shoe.
Yeah, the stack height's half a mil different or something.
Yeah.
It's a rare person who can feel or perceive a large difference from that. I don't know about the actual surface area being much different.
Okay.
I don't think there's a lot when you actually multiply it out and measure it all out. The sole of the shoes is so rigid anyway, it's almost a moot point. A lot of people who are getting hot foot and that type of thing with one pedal system is not because of the contact patch size of the cleat, it's because the cleat's too far forward or the seat's too high or there's no arch support or something. So a lot of people blame hot foot problems on the contact of the cleat being so small, but this shoe is so rigid anyway that force is distributed through the sole of a modern rigid carbon-soled cycling shoe so much that the contact patch size, a small variation in the size of the contact patch between the Shimanos and the Speedplays, is so small as to be, in my opinion, almost irrelevant.
Yes.
You know, if you're using a very flexible shoe, it might make a bit of a difference. But yeah, just use what works for you. And if one of them, if you really don't like some aspect of one of them, you know, the other pedal system may have a better solution, like the double-sided engagement. You know, the guys on Speedplays are always the first ones away from a set of lights.
Yeah.
They just stand on it and it goes in, you know. Yeah. So that's a big bonus for some people.
Yeah. Looks like they're getting going here. What actually happens here at Cam Cycling Collective in Brisbane?
Cam's is
there's a lot of indoor trainers, a lot of Wahoos.
There are 45, I believe, Wahoo kickers in this room, and 55 kilowatts of air conditioning to keep everyone cool.
Wow.
He's got drop-down projector screens. Basically, cool. I believe what Cam does is personalised training programs for each person. They come in and do a personalised workout.
Yep.
And they have sort of drop-down screens which show your workout. I think they use Trainer Road or something similar.
Yep.
And it's a really good, high-quality professional training service with indoor focus on indoor training. But I think that they also do a lot of organised outdoor rides and stuff like that. So Cam's just got back from Three Peaks where he towed a car tyre up the last 35-kilometre climb up the back of Falls Creek as a fundraising thing for motor neurone disease. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it doesn't look pleasant. There's footage of it somewhere on one of the promotional videos for the Three Peaks guys, for Peaks Challenge.
Right.
It doesn't look pleasant at all. So
no.
Better him than me. But look, he made it in sub-zero temperatures. He did it in 10 hours.
Yeah.
So he's a pretty serious old rider, Cam. He's an ex-pro from a while back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very, very good setup here, and I'm sort of a bit of a ring in here. I've got a temporary setup at the moment because I've only just moved here. So
yeah, cool.
Just trying to find my feet of where to be working, and I'm also trying to renovate a house at the moment, so I'm not looking for too much work.
Yeah.
So no, it's a really good setup, and Cam's got lots of available space during the middle of the day because most of the people work out in the afternoons and the early mornings.
Yeah, nice.
So we use that, and everyone wins.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Stress.
I'll see you in 3 months.
Yeah, 2 or 3, and just let me know if you have any trouble. If there is a problem, it might present earlier than that. You just got to let me know, and we'll make any changes as needed.